The chess queen is the most powerful piece on the chessboard. For a long, long time, there was no piece called the queen on the chessboard. For the first 1,000 years of the game, up until about the 1450s or so, the piece on the square where the queen was called the vizier, which means the wizard, I'm reliably told. And the wizard piece could only move 2 squares at a time, diagonally. And then suddenly around 1450 or so, from the Castile region in Spain, they invented this new chess move with the queen. And the game was called La Dama chess, or Queen's chess. And of course, the move was very different than the move of the vizier. The queen could basically move as far as she liked in a straight line until something got in the way, which meant that on the center of the chessboard she had some 27 choices of move. And this is drastically more than any other piece. And the resulting chess matches were very tactical, and there was lots of sacrificial checkmates and things like this that could be played by the players who had invented this new move in the Castile region. And so they loved it. It suited their temperament to have these quick attacking style games of chess. And they promoted this game or idea of Queen's chess, or La Dama chess, throughout Europe. And by about 1500, this was the way everybody played chess. And the move, or the old move, the vizier move, sort of faded away. And everybody then played Queen's chess. And that's really the last major change to the way the chess pieces move that's taken place, and that was 500 years ago or so. Along with this new powerful queen, as I said, came a lot of powerful attacks, and the game became far more exciting to play. Most of the research around this topic has been documented in a history by Marilyn Yalom called Birth of the Chess Queen. It's really more of a social commentary on the changes of the power of women throughout history, and the birth of the chess queen sort of coincided with the increase in political power that women experienced in the world. And it's a very interesting book, but it's mostly about politics, and it just sort of tracks the move of the chess piece and the changes in the way the queen piece moves to those changes in political power. So it's an interesting book, but that's basically where I got my information about the chess queen and how it moved. And Queen Isabella of Castile was believed to be the inspiration for how the chess queen moves. She was a very powerful and impressive queen, and her subjects invented the move in her honour, or at least that's Marilyn Yalim's claim. So being a powerful piece, there is a tendency for people to want to get the queen out into the action quickly. And today's game is a discussion of why you've got to be a bit careful with your queen. She's powerful because she has a lot of choices on the chessboard, but there's a paradox. Because she's so powerful in terms of choice, every time she's attacked, more or less, she has to run away. So she's a very good attacker because she has a lot of choices, but paradoxically she's the piece that has to do the most running away when attacked on the chessboard, because you can't afford to lose her. And this is a short game that illustrates some of the problems you can run into with your queen. So let's have a look at this game. Starts off in a pretty normal fashion, both players occupying the centre, trying to control the centre as per the golden rules. Development of the knight to f3 is always the best move there, because you're attacking the pawn and developing a back row piece. So controlling the centre, developing back row pieces, 2 of the 3 golden rules of chess. Knight c6 also develops a piece and takes care of the attack on the pawn. And now white strikes at the centre, something called the Scotch game. So straight away the queen's pawn comes out and attacks the centre. Black takes that pawn and white takes back. Now queen to h4. So black gets his queen out into the game nice and quickly, and so he's attacking the weak spot with the queen and looking for rapid development there. He's probably trying to get a move in with his bishop so that the bishop can then also attack the weak spot and hopefully get some sort of scholar's mate or something like that. But yeah, bringing your queen out early is fairly risky. At the moment, of course, the queen attacks the pawn at e4. So there's a threat on the board, and so white, naturally enough, develops his knight and protects the pawn at the same time. So white's following the right scheme. He's developing his knights and bishops before he develops his queens and rooks. You don't want to bring your queen out too early because it becomes a target of attack. Black continues with his development by bringing his knight out. And normally this is a very good move because this is where the knight belongs and you should develop it early in the game. The pawn can't advance here because this knight here has control of that square. And so that would be a sensible move under normal circumstances. The problem is this blocks the retreat of the queen. So the queen is now trapped in this section of the board. And if your opponent brings their queen out early in a chess game, you can get an advantage by attacking that queen. And white had a look at this position and did exactly that. He moved his knight up to f5 where it attacks the queen. Now, where can the queen move where she's safe? The knight's attacking her. Where must she move to be safe? Think about your answer. If you need more time, hit the pause button. The only safe square for the queen at the moment, in this position here, is to move the queen back one square to h5. Yes, the white queen does attack it, but it's one attacker, and the knight here defends. So one attacker, one defender. So if white played queen takes queen, the knight would capture back, and so the black queen is safe there for the moment. Now white can continue his development and attack the queen again. So can you see a move for white which develops a piece and attacks the queen again? When I say a piece, I mean a back row piece. Can you see a move that develops a piece and then threatens to capture the queen? If you need more time, press pause. Bishop e2 is the move. Now we have two attackers on the queen and only one defender. Plus the bishop is only worth 3 pawns and the queen is worth 9 pawns. So the queen must move away. Once again, there's only one square on the board where she's safe. Can you see a square the queen can move to where she's safe? Press pause if you need more time. G6 was the only safe square on the board for the queen. It's the only place she can move where she's safe. Now, in this position, white can actually attack the queen again. Can you see a move that would attack the queen and actually win the queen? Can you see the move? Okay, the move is knight across here to h4. Queen's attacked, and where can she go? Every square she could move to is attacked. This square is attacked by the bishop. Pawn. Capture the pawn, you get captured by the knight. This square here is attacked by the same bishop. This square, the white square bishop. This square, the pawns. We've talked about this square over here already. If the queen captures the pawn, then the knight captures her. So the queen is going to be lost. So what white's done here is develop his pieces and attack the queen at the same time. So if your opponent brings their queen out too early, gain an advantage by attacking it, and as you attack it, develop your pieces. So you don't want to bring your queen out too early, and if you have a reason for bringing your queen out early, make sure that the queen has a retreat. In this particular game, the knight at f6 blocked the retreat of the queen. So this knight here at f6 helped contribute to the loss of the queen and the loss of the game. Black gave up in this position because he had to lose a whole queen. The most famous opening trap is the Scholar's Mate, and it's a trap because if black responds correctly, he gets an advantage. So the Scholar's Checkmate, or 4-move checkmate as it's known as well, is based on the attack of f7 by the bishop and the queen. If white makes the wrong move in this situation, if black makes the wrong move in this situation, he loses the game. For instance, if he brings his knight out, this is checkmate. And there's a whole other video lesson on the scholar's checkmate. But in this position here, with the two pieces attacking, black can actually gain the advantage. And he gains the advantage by using the idea we've learned today. If someone brings their queen out too early, you attack it. Your pawn down here to g6, and it attacks the queen. The queen comes back to f3. Now the threat has been resumed. The queen is attacking the square again, as is the bishop. So two attackers and only one defender. Knight f6 blocks the line of the attack and develops a piece at the same time, so it's a strong move to play. And now black's starting to gain an advantage here in his development. The queen's out too early. So if white's feeling very ambitious, white might play g4, hoping to be able to advance to g5. Because if the pawn advances to g5, the knight's attacked again, and then black has two bad choices. Move the knight, in which case the queen is then attacking at f7 again, and white will be able to checkmate. Or if you don't move the knight, you'll lose your knight for a pawn. So often if white is stubborn, he'll keep trying to cause the scholar's checkmate. But once this position occurs, or any of the similar positions that might occur, you've got this idea of attacking the queen. So there's a move you can play on the board at the moment that attacks the queen. Can you see that move? If you need more time, press pause. The move is to play your knight down here and attack the queen. So you've got control of the center and you're attacking the queen. Now if white doesn't see your threats, for instance if the queen is played over here, now black gets a massive advantage with a fork. Knight takes pawn check, attacking a rook and a king. And black's winning easily now. Notice that the queen cannot stay on the f-file in this position. So you're forcing, you're removing all possibility of scholar's mate. And if white makes the wrong move, then this capture can take place. So now white put his queen over to d3, where it's a bit awkwardly placed. This pawn here now can't get out, which means it's going to be harder for this bishop here to develop. So probably the best bet for white is to retreat the queen all the way back to its original square. So the queen's moved 1, 2, 3 times, and it's now back on its original square. Black now has an easy game. Black can finish his development with the fianchetto if he likes, or he can bring his bishop out over this side of the board and then get castled. So black goes on to have a better game than white in this position. So once again, even the scholar's mate, if you know how to respond to it, you get the advantage if you remember the rule that if your opponent brings their queen out early, you should attack it. So try and remember that in your game. The normal order of development is knights and bishops, then queens and rooks. And always make sure if you bring your queen out early that she's got to retreat, because you don't want to have her trapped.